welcome to the Cloud Security Podcast by Google. Happy RSA Week 2024. Your hosts here are myself, Timothy Peacock, the Senior PM for Risk Analytics and Cloud Threat in Google SecOps, and Anton Chubakin, a reformed analyst and senior staff in Google Cloud's Office of the CISO. You can find and subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as at our website, cloud.google.com/podcasts. If you enjoy our content and want it delivered to you piping hot every Monday, please do hit that subscribe button. You can follow the show, argue with us, and the rest of our Cloud Security Podcast listeners on our Google Cloud Security community page. Find the link to that in our show notes. Anton, this is a AI plus crazy stuff episode.
This one is an AI and some really crazy stuff, including a moment when Tim was laughing so hard she almost fell off the chair on video.
That's true. I almost fell out of my chair.
Most of the listeners, I don't think, would see the video ever. But yes, I've seen Tim collapsing off the chair. And yes, there was a moment you would probably experience it in audio.
I was truly at a loss for words because I found the claim so unbelievable. And yet it's a claim made by a very smart Googler who I 99% of the time find entirely credible. So there's probably something there that I just haven't seen yet. And 5 years from now, no doubt I will wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh shit, he was right. So maybe listeners, with that, let's turn things over to today's guest. And with that, listeners, I'm delighted to introduce for the third time on the show, Ali Burstein, Google DeepMind Cybersecurity Research Lead. Delighted to have you on the show. This is another one of our RSA Week episodes where we're talking about your talks, which is, I guess, what we always do on the show, talk. Anyway, we're talking about AI and AI for evil. And so to Anton's pleasure, dismay, horror, tell us about AI for evil. What are we afraid of seeing here? What are we seeing here? What are we afraid we're seeing here?
Sounds good. So thank you for having me as a returning host on the show. I am happy to be there. So I have to talk at RSA this week. Next week, sorry. It will be next week. Monday, we'll talk about how we secure AI. Monday morning, hopefully there will be some people. And then Wednesday, we'll talk about the opportunities that AI present for cybersecurity. So for the good guy and for the bad guy. And I think we're going to dive right into the contentious topic of how bad guys can use AI. So the short answer is, at the moment, maybe not so much. I think there are a few things, though, to consider. The first one is we do see a black market for LLMs. And in general, we see multiple black market for advertising LLM capabilities or LM, large language model capabilities, including generating phishing, creating malwares, and creating phishing sites, and some exploitation. So, exploit this vulnerability and so forth. There is a paper from a university which look into great detail into those things. And it seems so far that the capabilities that the black market is doing quite well would be probably phishing generation, so phishing email, based on, ramping up more personalized phishing, and to a certain extent, probably generating fake website. They have some announced capability on malware and some announced capability on exploitation. From the looks of it, I look at the paper and I looked at a bunch of things which are generated. It doesn't seem to be real exploitability. It's more like, if you were to do this, that would work. So I don't think we are yet to be concerned by the model being able to self-exploit vulnerability just yet. So I would say somewhat on the phishing side, probably. I would also expect a lot of people will come up with, advanced phishing testing campaign using AI. I'm sure the RSA floor will be littered with people using LLM for that. So, be prepared for that too. So I think there are some advance. I think what's a little bit concerning for me is two things. The first one is...
Only two things you're concerned about in this space? Okay. What are they?
This week, maybe. Wait, only two things. Next week is going to be another.
This week. This week, for the purpose of that talk, in general, I think the one thing we should be a little bit concerned is there is some starting point of nation states start to use GenAI capability and exploiting, irrespective of which is a provider. So what's interesting is, and I think the best report is by OpenAI, so we'll give them credit for them. Mandiant did one too as well, will be around the state sponsor using it for understanding technical documentation. So for example, understanding how satellite works. That will be probably the people targeting Russia. trying to refine the scripting, trying to do a little bit of recon, asking questions. So I do think it is starting to be a co-pilot to a certain extent, and as we see the most advanced attackers started to do it. So there is some concern about the weaponization of them, and in particular, you could ask yourself how well people are monitoring their infrastructure for detecting such use case and making sure that they are not abused by that. So I think that is something of interest. I don't think people realize that actually nation state did start to use those to a certain extent. Not to the extent of writing exploits for themselves, but actually doing some of the work with that. How much is experimental versus how much is actually used to be determined, but at least it is something that has been crop up. I think the other thing we owe ourselves to be careful about is a dangerous capability, which is the model being able to do world-ending or at least world-shattering malicious actions.
But not the model would do that. The humans would do it, right?
Like Whopper style?
Yeah.
Yeah, so exactly. So, and I think that's what's interesting to talk about, which is, so we have, for example, BRNC, which is biological, radioactive, nuclear, and chemical weapons, where you could imagine the model doing it. But then, as you said, it's not the model doing it itself, it's the model helping an attacker to gain capability, right? It's more like a function gain where you cannot do it by yourself, but then with the help of the model, you are able to do further technological advance. I think it also applies to cybersecurity. For example, you could have a script kiddie who doesn't know much about securities and he found a way to exploit a WordPress vulnerability. It doesn't really work. The code is broken. Then the model might help him or help her or help them do better. And so I think there is some concern about the models being able to, in a way, give an attacker the same way that they would give knowledge worker an edge, right? So like the malicious copilot thing is a thing. So we do alignment, right? I think every major company from Google to OpenAI to Anthropic do alignment of model to try to prevent the model to refuse to answer those questions. But we were talking about the black market and the fact that the aligning model is still a thing and it's still doable. There's quite a few research on.
So I don't want to be mean about this, but like...
Yeah, I want to be mean about it, actually.
Okay,
let me go first. I'll go first. I'll soften him up, and then you go in for the kill. Is the worry that I'm going to be like, okay, Gemini, find me some black market, highly enriched uranium, and it's going to help? Because that seems unrealistic to me.
Okay, so like in this case, maybe my mean response is that what our guest is describing reminds me a little bit of like, what if the attacker reads a book? We should really go and align those freaking libraries to not write books on this. Like, I'm just failing to be scared because of these specific things. I'm scared of a lot of things, just not these.
Well, I'm scared that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about a non-threat.
Like, you can Google, you can go to the freaking library. Like, why is this different?
Yeah, why is this different, Ellie?
Okay, so fair enough. I don't think we should spend too much time on that. There's plenty of topic to cover, but I think it's an interesting question to raise. So same reason that some people do favor model over a search is you could imagine the model answering more precise questions. So let's take an example of a dirty bomb, right? So let's say if you go back to the Boston Marathon bombing, it was a dirty bomb created out of the shelf component. I'm not going to discuss, of course, for obvious reason, but let's say this was assembled in the United States with off-the-shelf component. Let's say you don't know how to do that. You can ask the model, okay, how do I make a bomb with what I have around? Or I don't understand how to make that thing. And you can get the model to do it. Furthermore, let's say you have a bug. Let's say you try to do something with electronics or you can actually show the model a picture. Remember, they understand picture and say, okay, I'm not sure quite how to do this thing. Can you please help me with my experiment? And so the model, in theory, and we're not there yet at all, just to be clear, this is not the capability we have today. You could do this. Case to the point, which was very funny, was there was in a more pleasant way, there was a person on the internet who had a problem with the bug. They didn't know how to debug it. So what they did is they take a video of them showing their code to Gemini and say, hey, Gemini, here's my code. And it showed a bunch of images and say, what do I do? And the model say, yeah, I got you. Here's all the things you need to do.
Okay.
And applied it. So imagine someone taking a video of what they want to do and say, okay, how do I combine those things? And then you get step-by-step instruction, almost like a helper. And I think that is kind of more of the realistic concern.
Uh-huh. So, okay, you scared me a little. So I'm sitting at home assembling my jerky bomb, and I try to detonate it, and it doesn't blow up. So I take a video of myself, post it online, and say, Gemini.
I would say my.
Sorry, I can't. This is too absurd.
So you may think it's absurd. I would say a more realistic scenario is I am a wannabe hacker. I want to hack a WordPress. I have found a vulnerability online. It doesn't quite work. I go to Gemini and I say, or to OpenAI, or whichever you want.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, I want to exploit this website. So this is what I think works, but then there's a bug and here's the error. Please correct it for me. And the model is like, yep, here's a fix. Okay. And then now you give accessibility of people who don't know how to code to be able to code. Or they're like, oh, how do I DDoS a website? And like, hey, there's this new attack on Slow Loris or whatever new attacks they have for DDoS. You should use that.
Okay.
And so basically you give some capability to people who haven't learned it on how to do things.
That does scare me a little bit. Yeah, I agree.
So it's going to upskill a script kiddie, but it's not going to make a nuclear bomb in my basement.
It is not a replacement of a library or a. They can't just go and Bing for it. It's like
it's context specific.
It's much shorter and faster, and much more democratizing. So I am a little bit scared. I think he succeeded in scaring me a little bit.
All right, well, you're batting 500 on scaring people, I guess.
No, I'm not trying to scare people. I'm just trying to say there's a lot of question about why people are concerned about it. Where is the executive order coming from the White House on the cyber capability? And I think the main concern is not the model today becoming sentient and decide to do it by itself. It's more, you are, as you said, making it faster and more easier of access, higher capability. And as I said, between the combination of nation states try to look at it for some things and the model being able to a certain extent to have some capability of reasoning, eventually there is this idea that if you have an army of hackers, like let's say some nation that we shall not be named, you might be able to get them a little bit better with the help of AI. So you are making the risk slightly or more high. That's what it is, right? Eventually.
Okay.
We're not there yet, just to be absolutely clear. But that is kind of like why it's interesting to think about it as a co-pilot for bad guys rather than the model becoming berserk, which I think what people think.
Yes.
I'll give you another example of that to explain a little bit that. My reasoning is like, when you ask people, let me ask you that question and then I'll answer. How do you think we're going to colonize Mars? How is it going to work?
So you build spaceships, you fly to Mars, right? Like, in what sense? Like, sorry, at high level, it's easy to answer. The detailed level is much harder, right?
Yeah, but here you go. Here's the point. A lot of people are like on the train also that we're going to send Matt Damon or an army of Matt Damon and colonizing Mars because that's what's in the book. Mm-hmm. So reality is with the current level of technology, we're probably to ship AI. And AI would probably do the terraforming for us because it doesn't need to breathe, doesn't need to stop, if it's fair, not a big deal.
It doesn't get tired of eating potatoes. I get it.
Yes, right. Exactly. But that is not the mental model you have. And I'm trying to say is that is what I think is important. We don't have yet a mental model of AI-assisted hacker. We have a model of hacker and the idea of model separated. We don't have yet this idea of AI-enhanced hackers. The same way that we don't have the idea of Mars terraformed by robots rather than
AI before humans.
Yeah, because the movie and the cultural lag is not there. And I think that's my point. My point is about this idea of like we need to change our mentality. And as a security practitioner, we need to know to think not as human assisted and what we can do with those gain of function. And that's a little bit of where we are finding our way where the best point of leverage and the best point of gain is. And to be honest, I do think it's better for the defender than for the attacker. I think the defensive capability are going to be far more interesting and far more powerful than the attacker, at least for the short and the long term. Midterm, I don't know. Maybe midterm, maybe there is some gain and then some go back. So it's not going to be like but yeah, short term and long term. Not midterm, I'm not sure.
So maybe it's time to start thinking about AI for defenders because I think we dedicated enough time to kind of the bad guys. And I think that our CISO, Phil Venables, have made this point a few times that in his opinion, AI would favor the defenders at least in the medium to long term. So you also just said the same thing, that AI would likely favor the defender. Can you build on that? Like, how is that? Is that long-term or short-term? And in what sense, how do you think this plays out?
I think it's probably right because the attacker has to cover a larger attack surface than the attacker, right? As a defender, you have to cover everything. And so the amount of effort and the amount of resources you have to pour is significantly higher, and we have significantly more processes, which means that we have more opportunity and more leverage to do it better. I think on the short term, and we talk about it at RSA, a lot of things around summarization and understanding are going to be the key driver. Mm-hmm. I think we recently published a blog post, Google, on how we use AI to do incident summarization. And we show that, for example, the AI summarization for incident response is actually better than a human because less tired. And then so we save a ton of time. So I think for incident response, the ability to analyze data and the ability to pre-generate report and to do a lot of the manual work today will be actually a massive gain. Mm-hmm. So if our incident response are faster and it's cheaper, then it's easier for us to defend. And if it's so it's going to give us a boost. Similarly, threat intelligence is going to take a big boost because threat intelligence is a lot about cross-checking and a lot of contextualization and a lot of learning, and those can be really, really done with good AI systems. So I think in the short term, all those tasks where we have put a lot of analysts, mm-hmm. they're going to get a massive boost by being assisted by AI. It's not yet there, but I think in the next year, we'll have a lot of assisted technology for threat intelligence, incident response at the very least. Mm-hmm. And that will help us tremendously to actually make people faster. And if you're faster to attack, that's pretty good, right?
Listeners, if you're keen on that direction of capabilities, you should check out last week's episode with Pyle, where we talk about exactly those things and then come up with, again, our shovels versus steam shovels metaphor for thinking about what it does to tier one analysts. Ellie, I want to ask a little bit of an off-the-wall question here, given that we've talked about evil uses of AI. Could I, as a bad guy, imagine for a minute that I'm a bad guy instead of a good guy at Google. What if I used AI to tamper with other AI and have some self-propagating evil AI influence throughout the world of AIs? Is there a foreseeable world of using AI to attack AI to make all of the AIs wormed evil? Are there going to be AI worms?
I think there is some risk with prompt injection, and I think the more we move to AI agent, where people want, to have an AI doing something on the internet and then get a result and propagating thing, I think it's going to be, yes, to a certain extent more difficult. There are AI risks, right? So now we're talking about the Wednesday talk, which is how we secure AI. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, if we look at Gemini is the application, not the model, the vast majority of the bug bounty we paid are through integration. Right, and I think that is the problem, right? People want to talk to the Drive, they want to talk about YouTube, they want to connect with Doc, and that's natural of you want the AI to do stuff for you.
Yeah.
But the more you interconnect system, we know that the more you interconnect a web application with a database, with this and that, the more we create vulnerability. So I think similarly for AI system, and the more autonomous the agent become, which means with less supervision, the more we end up into risky territory of, yes, the AI at least being able to autonomously do harm. I will be not surprised that eventually will have some side effect that people will not have realized just yet. I think we see it, right? And I think that is a big risk of the thing being derailed or having extensive agency or things like that. So we need quite a bit of control and be careful. Totally, Tim. I'm sure.
That was really interesting, though, what you said in there about bounties and integrations. And I also think for listeners, the distinction between Gemini, the application, and Gemini, the model, is very important to remember. People, if you listen to our previous episode again about SecLM, will get a dose of the distinction between model and application and why that distinction is so important.
Yeah, but I think it doesn't register outside of people doing tech. I think the problem is we're splitting hair in a sense, because we have the problem with, for example, people associating Chrome as the internet. Mm-hmm. You're like, what is the internet? And say that's Chrome. It's a difference between the chatbot app, which contain plugin and, have concern about DDoS and have concern about insecure output and validation, versus, the model, which is kind of the engine behind it, is almost moot. The same way that GPT-4 for people or ChatGPT is just the things they interact with. So I do think as a professional would have actually to have a lot of effort to educate people about what it really means and how the system works. And we haven't yet come up with enough, I think, educational material and enough training on people on how to do this. One of the main questions I got actually a lot is, how do I do red teaming or penetration assessment of an AI system? Like, I have an AI system, I have a chatbot, what do I look for? You have a web, think about it, right? You have a web app.
Yeah, it's a great question.
You have a web app and you're like, okay, what do I do? Well, XSS, CSS, SQL injection.
We've got the OWASP top 10 we've had for 2 decades now, and that's easy.
Yada. We have it for 2 decades, we're good, right? And now it's like, there is an OWASP top 10 for LLM, right? The problem is, how do I do it?
Right.
And I think that is something we'll try to answer a little bit later this year. That's the next thing we plan. I plan to work on and hopefully talk about publicly later on is, how do you pen test such a system? And there's a lot of work, right? They start to be having like red team framework, but that is a good question for our professional. We talk a lot about incident response, and I'm sure you had a previous episode on, as you said, tier 1 analyst and management and threat intelligence. The problem is, how about penetration testing team? How about people who do insurance? How about people who do so control analysis and those type of stuff? We're going to cover at our SIA. But then the pen testing is the next one where we haven't yet talked enough about. And those are very complicated problems.
And there's a lot of tooling that goes into good like web app pen testing. There's proxies for replay. There's things like Hack Me Bank or WebGoat or Damn Vulnerable Web App. Is there an equivalent like vulnerable LLM app that's out there yet? Have people open sourced you can teach your college kids to attack the LLM tool?
So I'd be very candid. I think the best one is from Microsoft. And they have something called Pirate, Pyrte, which is probably today the best one. Not that it is the ultimate thing you need, but at least there is one from Microsoft which is out, which is actually quite interesting. There is some question about a lot of the probing and active probing, where you were talking about this idea of having a model attacking another model. I think that's one of the things we found with the AI red team, which is you need to do model kind of fuzzing other model, if you would. You can't really fuzz with traditional technique because it's mostly prompt-based, so text and complicated data or complicated images. So you kind of need an AI attacking an AI in reality. So those frameworks are going to be quite different and quite more complex than the previous generation. It's actually pretty interesting as a topic. I think we'll see a lot of people start to be very interested. It start to be now kind of on the down low. I'll expect it to be like the major talk of the tone in the next 6 months or 8 months, to be honest.
Wow. I asked a good question spontaneously.
You did? Totally.
Yeah, I did. We should probably go to our closing questions because this can be too much fun. And I have a suspicion that our 3rd-time guest would soon be a 4th-time guest because red teaming, frankly, is one that I've seen a lot of people be quite schizophrenic because they confuse the application red teaming with AI red teaming, and we almost overloaded the term because
we totally did.
Yeah, we overloaded the term, and now people are even more confused. So, okay, I'll leave it be.
So I agree that the safety versus security thing is another really interesting angle. But again, probably for your 4th or 5th appearance on the show to cover that, I have to ask now our traditional closing questions. 1, do you have recommended reading? And 2, do you have a tip to help people improve don't help them improve their making of dirty bombs with AI. A tip to help people improve their security of AI.
Sure. So let's start with a tip.
Yeah.
The tip is get your basic right. I think I've been repeating that all year, but to be honest, it's not because you're doing AI that you should skim on basic control like encryption, access control, proper management of the log, and so forth. I think people take sometimes the idea of having AI as a license to skim on good control, and that would get them into trouble.
So we've started to call those the foundations rather than the basics on the show because it's easy to denigrate the basics. But when you think about foundations, if you get those wrong, you end up with a Millennium Tower of AI applications. And nobody wants an AI that leans 3 degrees to the right.
Yes, foundational control and foundational effort would be good. Code review of your code, not having broken all component that you integrate with. All those stuff will get you a way ahead of most people and a long way toward having a secure system. It's not because it's AI that it's not a IT system, right? And I think people kind of sometimes.
I really like that answer. And then recommended reading.
If you are interested in the space of AI for Defender, I think we'll have There is quite a few blog posts that we will link, I hope, with the podcast. I'm sure we'll link them to read about the recent release about how well models are or not so well are doing at patching and incident response. Hopefully, the slide deck from RSA, which we'll make public, of course, will have a list of pointers, more detailed pointers, so maybe you can skim through those. And I think for AI security, same thing, there is a safe framework that we released, so that will have a link to the safe framework. And then hopefully the RSA talk will have all the control and all the risk and all the details. So if you want to do that, I think the 2 slide deck, I plan to make them available because honestly, I didn't find a good set of resources which were a little bit up to date. And of course, the OWASP Top 10 for LM, we mentioned it. Of course, the OWASP Top 10 is a really good resources, and MITRE and a bunch of standard as well. But if people want like a short summary visual, then yeah, we need a slide. I'm sure the people will at RSA talk about that. Anton will actually have a very good introduction also to SAFE. So we can, since he's here on the show, also have him prop for him to do a very good presentation on SAFE as well. So perfect. Quite a bit of material at RSA.
Well, Ellie, thank you so much for joining us once again. And I look forward to you coming back, hopefully sooner than 6 to 8 months to talk about all the great AI red teaming and how to actually do the practice of it.
Fair enough. Bye-bye. Have a good bye.
And now we are at time. Thank you very much for listening and, of course, for subscribing. You can find this podcast at Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Also, you can find us at our website, cloud.withgoogle.com/cloudsecurity/podcast. Please subscribe so that you don't miss episodes. You can follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/cloudsecpodcast. Your hosts are also on Twitter at Anton_Chuvakin and _Team Peacock. Tweet at us, email us, argue with us, and if you like or hate what we hear, we can invite you to the next episode. See you on the next Cloud Security Podcast episode.